Hey guys, David Monk, after school STEAM educator with Fort Bend Children's Discovery Center, coming at you live for this geek out moment right here at Science Station. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. If you were with me last Tuesday, we had a blast. But if you weren't, go ahead and check that video out. There might be some helpful information in that. So per usual, I'm going to go ahead and just roll through some materials, but I know that you guys need some time to set up if you're going to do this investigation with me today. So I'm going to talk about a few things and you guys go get your materials ready. So if you don't have your materials, this will be available later. You can check it out and do the investigation on your own. But if you're going to do it with me, now's the time to go ahead and get all your stuff together. So I've got my scientific journal with me, which I will have for every investigation, super important for a scientist. I'm not going to go super in detail about this, but if you would like to learn more about that, just check out the candy chromatography video, and it will tell you much more in depth about why we have a scientific journal. The lowdown, or the simple of it is we need to not forget anything, so we're going to write it down. I also brought my outline because I've got so much stuff that I want to pass to you guys. I just want to make sure that I don't forget anything. And then I have my materials. So before we get rolling, like I said, we'll give everybody a few minutes to go ahead and get their investigation set up. And if we've got some people that want to come in or run a little late, we'll give them a few minutes as well. So again, I'm David Monk, after school STEAM educator, Fort Bend Children's Discovery Center. We want to give a big thank you to our funder Floor for making this event possible. So thank you guys so much. Without your help, we wouldn't be able to do this investigation. So let's go ahead and get started talking about a few things. First thing, let's talk about, this is our creepy concoction event, right? So what does that mean to you guys? So we'd love to hear emails, or you can go ahead and type into the chat, but our email is geeks@cmhouston.org. That's geeks@cmhouston.org. So if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, any of that stuff, just shoot us an email and we'll get back to you. So without further ado, how many of you guys are ready for Halloween? I love Halloween. I know you love Halloween. My last investigation was on candy, which we all love. Today we're going to do a creepy concoction or a spooky density ultraviolet experiment, right? So I'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit more in depth as we get on further into this video. But I want to know who has a creepy, scary costume. If you have a creepy, scary costume, go ahead and give us a thumbs up right now. All right, what about you guys out there that have a funny costume? Those are personally my favorite. I love people to look at me and laugh. Maybe not all the time, but definitely during Halloween. So if you're going to do a funny costume, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. All right, last but not least, what if you're just going to dress up and look nice like a princess or a prince or something like that, a distinguished figure? Go ahead and give us a thumbs up now. That's what we like to see. And all throughout this, give those heart emojis, the thumbs up emojis. That's how we know that you guys like what we're doing. So let us know so we can keep doing this stuff. And if we have to, we'll change it to make it better for you. All right, so today my investigation is going to be a density tower, or you may have even heard density tube before. So this is a very common experiment to explore density, right? But what I've done today is I've added a little bit of a twist. So I've brought in ultraviolet light. So this is ultraviolet light, or you guys might have referred to it as a black light. I'll go ahead and turn it on. I don't know if you guys can see it. All right, so that's my ultraviolet light. I'm going to talk more about what ultraviolet light is a little bit later, but if you have one of these, you definitely want to go ahead and pull it out because that's going to be the twist in our experiment today. So let me go ahead and go over the materials, but before I do that, let me talk about safety. So again, my last Facebook Live event was candy chromatography, materials that we ingest all the time, but today we're going to be using different chemicals. Now, science can be fun, but it can also be dangerous. So please, 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 please do not mix any chemicals unless you know that they're safe. And I'll be more specific. Please do not go underneath the sink and pull out bleach and stuff like that and mix it together. Those things can actually mix together, cause a chemical reaction, and make hazardous materials. So please don't do that. If you're going to do this investigation, we recommend that you use the materials that I'm using today because we know they're safe. But if you have other ones that you want to use, just make sure you research and make sure that you're not putting yourself in any danger. That's the last thing we want. We want you guys to have fun, but most importantly, be safe. All right, so the materials today, I've got my scientific journal per usual. It's going to be ultraviolet light, which I just showed you guys. If you have a bigger one, it'd be better, but small is okay. We're going to do tonic water. So this is tonic water, right? We've got canola oil. So here's my canola oil. rubbing alcohol. This is 50%, but you can use all the way up to 90%. And then I'll talk about why it's pink here very shortly. After that, we've got water. So I've got my water. And again, this is, if your water's this color, I don't recommend you drink it, but I'll explain why it's actually this color. So this is just H2O, and I'll tell you what chemical I put in it to turn it green. Next is powdered laundry detergent. I don't have that here with me right now because that's actually another part of this investigation that I'll show you guys later. But if you have some of that, it'll be super cool for this. Next is clear dishwashing gel. So here's my clear dishwashing gel. Usually it would be clear, and you're probably going, why is it green? Again, we're going to get into why this is actually green here in just a moment. After that, some neon paint, which this is corn syrup. So all I've done to make the corn syrup green is mix some neon paint on the inside. So I got my corn syrup, I mixed some neon green, and now it's a spooky concoction, right? After that, a clear vessel. So you really want to have a clear vessel for this investigation, because if you're using a cup or something like that that you cannot see through, you won't be able to see your results. And remember, scientific investigation, extremely important for you to be able to observe what's going on. If you can't observe what's going on, you really don't know, right? And then last thing is a highlighter. Now you're going to want a pair of scissors, and I'll just put this out to you guys. If you're going to use the highlighters today, I prefer that you get your parents to help you, because you're going to need a large pair of scissors, all right? All right, so those are our materials. We're going to be doing, again, a creepy concoction, which is our ultraviolet density tower, or tube. So one thing I want to remind you guys, go back and look at the candy chromatography video, but make sure that you follow your scientific method, all right? And just very briefly, I'll tell you, this is to make sure that you get the most accurate results that you could possibly get. So if you guys want this, just like last time, it's at geeks@cmhouston.org, and we have all these materials ready and available for you if you need them. So, you know what? Let's just go ahead and start, get rolling here. So, per usual, I like to conduct things just like we're in a scientific laboratory. So if you're going to do the same, make sure that your area is clean. And I also do recommend today, none of these materials are particularly toxic, but if you have an allergy or something like that, make sure you have your gloves, your lab coat, or something to protect your skin and your clothes, and also safety glasses, very important. So I'll go ahead and put my safety glasses on now. And I'll also have my rag on the side here, just in case I make a mess. But if you saw my last video, you know I'm a sweaty scientist. And I'll go ahead and talk about that. So you think I might just be trying to be silly, but honestly, in a lab, you don't want to be sweaty, because if you sweat, some of that can fall into your investigation, and then you won't get proper results. You'll get that cross-contamination that I've talked about before. So you do want to have a rag to clean you, and then another rag to clean your area. So make sure you're doing those things as you go. So again, I've got my gloves. I'm going to go ahead and put those on so I can keep everything, follow my lab safety rules, and make sure I'm as safe as possible while I conduct this investigation. And again, I'm not using anything that is particularly hazardous, but you never know. And for your parents' sake, you want to keep everything clean, including you, right? Okay, so we've gone over our materials. We've gone over safety. We've talked about scientific journal. Make sure you guys are writing everything down. We've talked about the scientific method. Make sure you follow the scientific method so you're doing the best investigation that you possibly can do. So again, I'm David Monk, after-school STEAM educator right here at Fort Bend Children's Discovery Center. Big shout out to our sponsor, Floor. Thank you so much for making this investigation happen today. So we're going to get right into it. So I've got my procedure, and like I said, you guys will have to check my other video if you want to know exactly what's on this, but with my procedure, it's going to tell me how to conduct the investigation. So my first step says prepare the cornstarch, and here's my cornstarch here, by mixing some neon paint. And you guys can see, we talked about that already, but I've already done that. It kind of looks like Ghostbuster ectoplasm, right? It looks pretty cool. We did it on purpose because it's Halloween, and we want to make this experiment, you know, have a Halloween esque to it, we'll say. So I've already mixed it in. It doesn't take much paint at all, but this is just regular corn syrup and some neon paint, and you can use whatever color you like. I chose green because green is actually my favorite color. All right, so I've prepared already my cornstarch with my neon paint. The next thing is remove the ink from a highlighter. So let me tell you this, guys, before you get rolling and do this step, you're going to take the ink part out of this, but you need to know that you will not be able to use this highlighter again. So if you've grabbed this off of mom or dad's desk or somebody, and you're going to bust it open for this investigation, make sure they know, especially, that they're not going to get it back. They'll have to get a new highlighter. So it says remove the ink from a highlighter. What you're going to do is you're going to take a pair of scissors, and again, I prefer that you guys get your parents to do this because these can be sharp and dangerous, right? And you're just going to go in the back, and you're going to pry off that part right there. So now I've got my highlighter, and I'm just gonna tap it, and this is the ink. This is the chemicals, guys. So what you're gonna do, you can see I've done this with the alcohol, but that was a pink highlighter. All I did was take the ink out, stick it in the highlighter, and let it sit for several minutes. So this one, the water, is actually the same yellow color here. Same thing, you're just gonna take the ink out and sit it in the water for several minutes. The longer you sit, the more of the chemical is gonna leach out, and then the brighter, more fantastic color you'll have. So that's your next step. So you're gonna wanna prepare pretty much any of these substances that you would like. But what I've done is I've chosen all these chemicals here will glow under ultraviolet light. We'll talk about why, but I don't even necessarily need to add anything. The water won't particularly do it, that's why I did it, and also the rubbing alcohol. But the rest of the stuff here, we actually know by doing our background research that they do glow under a neon light. All right, so we've prepared our chemicals, our liquids. Everything we're gonna use today is liquid except for the very last ingredient that we'll put in. So now, like I said, allow the water to sit, and guys, make sure you're thorough on your procedure. Write down every step, even if it's something that you don't think you're gonna forget. You need to do that so if other people are gonna follow this procedure, they know, because they're not necessarily gonna know unless you tell them. So, first thing, we're gonna start pouring our chemicals into our graduated cylinder. So I've got a large graduated cylinder, and I've got a small one. But here, we like to go big, so we're gonna use the big one today. And I'll talk about the variable. Remember, the variable is something that you're going to change in your experiment. So what I'm going to change in this experiment today is actually the amount of liquids that I add to my graduated cylinder. Reason being is I want to know if I'm creating a density tower, and I already have some background knowledge on that, but I already know if I add certain things, they're going to go to a certain area depending on their density, right? But I want to know if I add more water or more canola oil or more alcohol, if I add more than other chemicals, will that make it more dense, less dense, or will it stay the same? So that's going to be our variable today, the amount of chemicals that I add to our graduated cylinder. Remember, you do not have to have a graduated cylinder, but you need to have a clear vessel. Without a clear vessel, you will not be able to see this experiment, and basically you're wasting your time. Remember, we don't waste our time as scientists. We do our best to be as efficient as possible. So, first step, you're carefully going to pour the cornstarch into your clear vessel. So I'm gonna do this one a little bit differently than I've done, or that I will do the rest of the chemicals. But this is a very, very viscous liquid. So it means that it pours very slow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go right down the center. I still wanna go slow, but I don't wanna touch the sides. Now, the great thing about this investigation today is, since it's a density investigation, let's say you mess up and you do touch the side. It won't make a difference, because in the end you'll get perfect results. You just have to let it sit a little bit longer. Now, I would like for you guys to kind of see how this works out while we're doing it, so I'm trying to be very, very careful, right? And I didn't measure out any specific amount of cornstarch. I just made sure that I am adding a different amount than I'm adding to the rest. And that's the great thing about a graduated cylinder. If you have one at home, you definitely want to use it, because you can actually see how much fluid or liquid, which is a fluid, into your graduated cylinder. All right, so that looks pretty good. Again, be careful not to get it on the side if you don't have to. I got a little bit, but in the end, it really won't matter. So let me go ahead and get my rag. All right, so we've added our cornstarch to our graduated cylinder. I mean, that looks cool right now, and we haven't even finished the investigation. All right, so the next thing we're going to add is, let's see, dish soap. So I've got some dish soap here, and I actually know the density of these chemicals because I've done this investigation many times, but I feel like it's a better investigation if I play the role and act like I don't know what will happen. So I'm just going to kind of add them in any order, and we'll see what happens. So the next one is my dish detergent. This is just clear dish detergent, and again, I've added a couple of yellow highlighters in there to kind of make them, you know, pop just a little bit, because we are doing creepy concoctions. So I've got this one in a squirt bottle because it's just a little bit easier. Again, for this, the very viscous fluids, you want to go right down the center. And viscosity is just the property of a liquid that describes how fast or slow it'll flow. So liquid with a low viscosity or thin like water is going to flow quickly. But something like syrup or corn syrup or laundry detergent isn't going to move quite as quick. It's going to be very viscous. All right, so I just want to make sure that I'm adding a different amount. Looks like I got a little bit of highlighter coming out of there. We don't want that in there. All right, so again, I'm trying to go straight down the center here without getting too much on the side. If you do, it doesn't matter if you get it all over the side. In the end, you'll have great results and you will be able to find out the density of all these chemicals. So let's see. I'm just going to pick the next one. This is tonic water, right? So I'm going to take my tonic water, and this is for the rest of the liquids. This is kind of how you want to do it. You're going to take your vessel, my graduated cylinder. You want to turn it on your side and then pour slowly down the side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Beautiful, that's looking good. Remember, if you're doing the same variable as me, and you do not have to, but if you are, remember, we want to add different amounts of liquids. We want that to be our variable today, the thing that we change in our investigation. So I think that's going to be plenty. And then you guys can actually see that it's already starting to separate into its density. So what is density? Density is just a measure that compares amount of matter that an object has in its volume. Now you're like, whoa, what are those terms? What does that mean? I have a simple way of describing density. Take two objects that are the same size. My example is going to be a golf ball or a ping pong ball. Now pretend like you have a ping pong ball right now, okay? So go ahead and imagine you throw that ping pong ball and hit me right here square in the forehead. Now, I might not be too happy, but I'm not really hurt, right? It just kind of boom, bounced off my head. Now, imagine you have a golf ball. Now, whip that golf ball at my forehead as hard as you can, and ow! Not only am I in pain, but we are no longer friends, right? So make sure you don't do that investigation at home, but that's just a good way to get across. They're the same size. They have about the same volume, but one is much more dense. The golf ball is much more dense than the ping pong ball. Remember, the ping pong ball is actually full of air. So that is a good way to describe density. All right, so let's go ahead and add some more chemicals. I want to put these out of the way so I make sure I'm not adding them twice. So I've got my tonic water, I've got my corn syrup, I've got my detergent, dishwashing gel. All right, so let's do alcohol. We'll do the alcohol next. So I'm going to go ahead again. Remember this one, guys, you want to put it on its side and add it very slowly. You can add them quickly, and I'm not going to lie, it actually looks pretty cool, but you will not be able to get the results to this experiment as quick. You'll actually have to wait a few hours for the different levels of density to even out to where they're supposed to go. So in this investigation, the most dense is going to be at the bottom, and the least dense is going to be at the top. So right now, we can actually go ahead and look at what we have, and we can tell you that our cornstarch is the most dense, right? And then next we have our tonic water, and which is surprisingly near the bottom. I would think that that would be something that doesn't have a lot of density, but apparently it does. And then we have our dishwashing detergent or gel right there, and then we have our alcohol floating on top. So now we've done some tonic water. Let's add some regular water and kind of see what happens when we do that. So make observations. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see, but it is immediately going below the least dense chemicals, which would be the alcohol and the dishwashing gel. All right, so we've added some of that in. The cool thing about this is even after you initially conduct your investigation, let's say you did it perfectly, you're doing it nice and slow, it still isn't quite even. So leave these out overnight, a day or two. I have it that I've left out for weeks, and you'll actually see all kinds of stuff start to separate, other chemicals in there that you may not have been aware of. So next, let's do, I'll tell you what, guys, if you want me to do canola oil next, give me a thumbs up. If you want me to do soap, give me a heart emoji. So you guys go ahead and think about that. What I've told you, the twist today is going to be ultraviolet light. So ultraviolet light is a form of radiation, and it comes from something called the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And you can see that ultraviolet light falls right here between visible light and X-rays. So ultraviolet light, UV light, is actually something that we get from the sun. So this is a black light, and what they've done is they've actually painted it with phosphors to give it the effect of a ultraviolet light, or just a ultraviolet light man-made and not one that you would find in nature. So I'm going to go ahead. Looks like soap is the winner. All right, so you soap guys out there, looks like you won. So I'm going to go ahead and add the soap next. Let me move my alcohol off to the side. And again, same thing as the other ones. Tilt it gently and pour it down the side, very slow. I wonder where it's going to go. Oh, man. I don't know if you can get a good shot of that, but look at that. Obviously, our scientific mind tells us right now that soap is pretty dense because look what it's doing. It's immediately going below the other chemicals, the alcohol, the dishwashing detergent. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's a way you can determine density just by pouring liquids into a vessel. I mean, who would ever think that science would be so easy, but also so amazing and so accurate? Like, you learn so much from doing such a little bit of work. It's crazy. All right, so we can see it looks like our soap is going to be second in our density. All right, so last but not least, we have our canola oil. So if you guys think the canola oil is going to stay on the top, give me a heart emoji. If you think the canola oil is going to go below the alcohol, give me a thumbs up. All right, so here we go. Canola oil. We'll see what happens. Uh-oh. I don't know if you guys can see, but it looks like our oil, for the most part, is staying towards the top. So what do we deduce from our investigation when we do that? We can tell that right away our canola oil is the least dense because it's on the top. Next, we've got our rubbing alcohol. After that, we've got our dishwashing gel, and you guys can see a little bit of soap is in there, but if we leave this over time, it is going to go ahead and separate and fall into the proper layer, right? And then we've got soap, and then last but not least is our corn syrup with our neon paint on the inside. So when ultraviolet light bounces off an object, it contains special substances called phosphors. So when they do that, they emit visible light in response to radiation. So for example, our teeth and our fingernails have phosphors in them. So if you guys have ever been under a black light before, go ahead and smile because it's going to be the brightest smile you've ever seen. And I'll go ahead and tell you a marketing trick that you used to do with laundry detergent. When I was a kid, they used to have a commercial that said, take your laundry out into the sun because it's so clean from our laundry detergent. But what they didn't tell you is that it actually contains phosphors in that laundry detergent and still does. So when you go into sunlight, which contains ultraviolet light, it actually glows. So people are out there going, look how clean my shirt is, when actually they were just seeing the phosphors glowing underneath the ultraviolet light. That's a brilliant marketing move in my opinion. All right, so we finished our first, or our density tower. Now, let's say you don't have an ultraviolet light. That is okay, guys. As you can see, this investigation totally works without ultraviolet light. So you can use other chemicals. I suggest other liquids. Usually ones that you would ingest are going to be safe. But again, you have to do your background research. Please, please, please do not put yourself or anybody else in danger by mixing chemicals that you don't know anything about. And remember, a scientist isn't going to do that either. If they don't know the effects, they're going to take the most precautions they possibly can to make sure that everybody is safe. So you guys do the same, because remember, we're all scientists. When we sit down here for these live events, we're all playing the role of a scientist, and I know a lot of you are going to be future scientists. All right, so let's see what we've got next. So that was my investigation. Once you're done, you should go ahead and start recording your results. And I'll show you, I've got my diagrams. Again, a diagram is just a picture that you draw with labels. If you're a horrible artist, that's okay, that's why we label. But I've got my graduated cylinder here, and I've got my ultraviolet light. And then when I did this before, I tried to go ahead and write the order that they came out in. So you guys should be doing the same thing. And my hypothesis for this investigation, normally I would tell you that first, but I forgot, is I think the chemicals will form layers of density, starting with the most dense at the bottom, and the least dense at the top. Now, I've done this many investigations, so that is my background research, but I was also curious about the amounts that you put. And it looks like my conclusion is going to be, it doesn't really matter how much of the chemical you put in. It depends on the density. So I could have filled, half up with alcohol and the other half with, or I could have put just the bottom alcohol and filled the rest up with the oil. All the oil would be sitting on top. That's what we learned from this investigation. It actually shows us that that is not a factor when you're talking about density. Super cool. And again, that's why we do scientific investigations. So for the finale of this demo, like I said, this is an ultraviolet light density tube or tower. I know you guys have probably seen these before, maybe even done them in school at home, but I wanted to add a twist. So remember, ultraviolet light, all the stuff that I've used contains phosphors. So the water, the water doesn't necessarily contain phosphors or the rubbing alcohol, but that's why we added the highlighter, because the highlighters do contain phosphors. So we'll put those off to the side. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna dim the lights, and you're gonna wanna do this at home too. So I'm gonna turn out the lights, and then we're gonna take you over here in the back of Science Station, and we're gonna show you what our density tubes look like whenever we put it under ultraviolet light. So come on, come with me, guys. So let me go ahead and turn this light off. All right, so I told you I've got one more ingredient. It's gonna be our laundry detergent, right? And this is a solid. So this is actually almost another investigation. I wanted to see what happens when you put a solid, when you're talking about density, into a bunch of liquids. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn the lights down. Find the switch here. There we go. So these are two density towers that I made previously, and it's using all of the same materials. So you guys can see they're really glowing underneath that ultraviolet light. So when the ultraviolet light hits it, it returns it back as almost like a different, you can see the light because of the way it filters it out. So that's what we're seeing now. And some of this stuff, it's like canola oil. You guys use that to cook all the time, but did you know, look how it glows, right? There's our laundry detergent, there's our corn syrup, our water, our tonic water, and then here we go. So here's the last one. Oh, let me turn, I got another light on. There we go, that makes it look a little bit better. All right, so we've got laundry detergent, and maybe you guys can see, that it does actually glow underneath the ultraviolet light. So I want to see, just more or less for like a cool effect, but what happens when we add the laundry detergent, which glows, to all these other things that glow. So let's go ahead and get it going and see what happens. Remember guys, make sure you ask your parents to use the laundry detergent. You don't just want to take these things without their permission. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put a bunch in there. Sometimes go big or go home, right? And then you guys can kind of see it trickling down. So what we've learned about density today so far, we know that the laundry detergent is at least more dense than our canola oil there. So we can see it kind of go. And then one more thing I want to show you guys. Maybe you messed up today. Maybe you didn't quite get it right. And you got all the chemicals mixed up together. That's okay, because I'm actually going to mix this one up, and we'll go ahead and see what it looks like. And all I have to do is let it sit for several hours, maybe even overnight, and you'll see when you come back in the morning, all of the layers will be into their level of density. So remember, most dense, least dense. So you can go ahead and write down in your journal which of these materials are most dense to least dense, or if you prefer, you can do it least dense to most dense. So let me go ahead and give it a little stir. Now, I'll tell you what, guys, tell me that's not a creepy concoction. So this is a mixture. We talked about mixtures in a candy chromatography investigation. So right now, that's what I have. I have a mixture here, and over time, density, gravity is going to pull these things down, and they're going to separate into their density levels. But I'm telling you what, that looks like something right out of a Halloween movie, right? Definitely don't drink this stuff. It's not going to taste good, and it'll actually be very bad for you. So don't get that idea in your head. But that's pretty cool. That is our ultraviolet density tube or tower. And I hope you guys enjoyed this investigation. I'm David Monk, after school STEAM educator right here at Fort Bend's Children's Discovery Center. Thank you so much to our funder Floor. You guys are awesome, so we can make these creepy concoctions live for you guys. Thank you so much. David Monk, after school STEAM educator, Fort Bend Children's Discovery Center, signing out.